Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. In this video, we're looking at some more physics math, and it's really applicable to us here in this unit that we're studying about projectile motion, but also elsewhere. This is really universal kind of stuff, useful in all kinds of places. So the Pythagorean Theorem, basically when we're dealing with a right triangle, and this is why it's very general and applicable to all kinds of places. Any kind of right triangle that you can conceive. Well, if you know two sides of the triangle and you want to know the third side, then the Pythagorean theorem becomes really useful. Before we get into it, though, we need to kind of sort of define what we're talking about. And so if we have any kind of right triangle in any sort of arrangement, it doesn't matter how it's rotated, there's always going to be a right angle inside the triangle. That's why it's called a right triangle. That's the 90-degree angle. And something that's pretty important to recognize is that the side of this triangle that is opposite of the right angle, well, that's got a name called the hypotenuse of the triangle. Let's switch colors here. Let's try this one. That's the hypotenuse. And there are two other angles inside the triangle, and we may or may not know what they are. But for the lengths of the sides, well, when using the Pythagorean theorem, the angles inside are not terribly important as long as you remember which side is the hypotenuse. It's opposite of that right triangle. The right triangle is easy to recognize. The right angle is easy to recognize. It's the only one that looks like a square edge, basically like the square edge of a square corner of a paper. Well, let's get to it. So, what does the Pythagorean theorem look like? Since we're, there is some math involved. Basically, it says that for any right triangle, basic triangle here, that there are three sides to it, and we can call them sides A and B and C. And in the Pythagorean theorem, it's real cool to remember that usually the hypotenuse is what's called side C. It doesn't have to be, but that's how it's written. And so the Pythagorean theorem says that if you take the square of the two sides A and B and add those two together, then you'll get C squared. It equals C squared. It equals the hypotenuse squared. All right, so let's make use of this real quick. Let's look at a couple triangles. Let's see. Let's do one that's kind of longer and not very tall. All right, and we're going to have a side of 6, and we're going to have a side of 11, and we want to know, well, what's the length of the hypotenuse, and we'll just call that C, because that's how the equation is usually used. All right, well, we've got A squared plus B squared equals C squared, and we can call this one A, and we can call this one B, and it doesn't matter which one you call A and B. And so we got 6 squared plus 11 squared equals C squared. And so I've got to take the square root of both sides. That will be 6 squared is 36. If you don't know how to do this in your head, that's 121. Well, that calculator's real handy for that. So 36 plus 121, all under the radical. That's going to be 157. And that's equal to the square root of 157 is equal to C. And so we do that, and you get right around 12.5 is the value of C. That's the length of the hypotenuse right here. About 12.5. And as long as we remember, okay, since we recognize that this corner, this angle is the right angle, then C is the hypotenuse, and we're using this equation correctly. So what about one more time here? Let's say we have a triangle kind of looks like this. Okay, there's a right angle. That's easy to put in there. And so we know this side is 6, and we know this side is 7, and we want to know this side. All right. So is this side C? Well, no, because C is usually the hypotenuse, the way this is written, and the hypotenuse is known as the side opposite. So here's C right there. C is the side opposite of that right angle. We can call this one A if you like, and that means this one could be B. So the same formula, and so what I've got is, I'm looking for B now. A is 6, so A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And I'm looking for B, so I'm going to have B squared. I'm going to subtract that from both sides. 7 squared minus 6 squared. I've got to take the square root of both sides to get B. 7 squared is 49. 6 squared is 36. So 49 minus 36, well, that's 13. So square root of 13. And that means B is right around 3.6. A bit of rounding perhaps. So we can add that if you like. There it is. So that is the Pythagorean theorem. It's just that simple. You'll see later how this is used for us in physics, and it's such a powerful tool for us. It's not the end thing that you want to know, but it becomes a tool for us to discover lots of other things regarding projectile motion, perhaps. We can apply it to forces as well, and lots of other areas. So make sure you know this one well and you're comfortable working with it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.